Okay, so I want to start by saying hello and a massive thank you very much for joining us today. We've got a really exciting session, which I'll go through in a little, a bit more detail in a few seconds. Just going to do a little bit of housekeeping to begin with, just to let you know that we are recording this session. And that we will be sending it out after the session. If you do have to drop off at any point, we hope you stay with us for the entirety. But if you do have to leave us, we'll send it out to you. We've got 60 minutes today, and there's loads to get involved in. We're going to make it a really interactive session with a Q&A. So please do send your questions across, and we'll get through those. My name's Jono. I'm head of marketing here at Learning People, and I'm sure you're all at different stages of your journey. We've got students who are currently students with us, and we've got people who are just researching about the career options. So it's great to have you all with us. The session today is going to be all about AI. And the skills you actually need to future-proof your career. And we've broken it down into a few sections, which will complement all the questions that you have for us. So what we want you to get out of today, we're going to talk about the impact and the impact on non-technical employees, and I am one of those for sure. We're going to talk about AI in business and how AI is being used, and a biggie. Is the skills that you need in AI to future-proof your career. So that's going to be the kind of foundations of what we're discussing over the next hour. Let me introduce to you our guest for today. So very delighted to be joined by Learning People, friend of the family, Chris Pedder. So Dr. Chris Pedder, who is a Chief Data and AI Advisor at Obrizum. Perfect. I got it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Are you overlooking Lake Geneva?
Almost, Jono, although I'm up in the clouds today, so you can't actually see much apart from just about your hand in front of your face that side.
Oh, is it? It's like that. Beautiful Switzerland, but you've got a cloudy day.
Yeah, so you feel sorry for me.
No. Actually, we're down in Brighton and it's been a really sunny day. We've had a really sunny week. But yeah, I can picture Lake Geneva now. What a beautiful place to be. So really looking forward to getting involved in today's session, Chris. Thanks for joining us. And we're also joined by our Director of Education, Rachel Kay. So she's going to be answering questions about courses and kind of course related questions, anything that is educational based. Rachel's here to answer those. Please, as I keep saying, send in your questions. We'll answer them as we go throughout the session. Rachel has just dropped off, so
Oh,
we've come
no,
back because I
I'm
want Rachel to talk
still,
about. Are you there, Rachel?
oh, I'm still here. I don't know why. I'm still here.
Perfect.
Can you still hear me?
We, we can still hear you. Would you like to give an overview about some of the new
Sure.
courses that we've introduced very recently?
Yeah. Let me start really quickly as thanks for the intro, Jono. So I'm Director of Education at Learning People and had a very long career in adult education and a long background in technical education. So worked in the defence sector for about 20 years. So lots of software engineers being developed and trained on tech skills, project management. So my role at Learning People is all about student outcomes. So I look after our student care team and also our career services team. But my relevance today really is because I'm also responsible for the strategy around our curriculum. So that means my team work together with our industry partners, so with people like Chris, to look at where we should be developing content. And you won't be surprised that clearly AI has been on the top of our list from a product development point of view for a while now. And actually in September this year, we have launched some new products linking specifically to AI skills. And when I suggested to Jono that we had a webinar around this isn't about people becoming technical experts in the building of AI. We're not suggesting we're all going to go away and be AI data scientists and do that. But I was inspired a couple of months ago by a stat from Indeed. Indeed is a large sort of online hiring lab. And they said that 2/3 of job postings already list skills that perhaps AI can handle. And this report said that in every job posted on Indeed today, from a truck driver to a doctor to a software engineer, will face some level of exposure to generative AI-driven change. So what that really means is no matter what profession you go into, you need to have AI awareness. It isn't optional. It's definitely going to be essential for the workforce. So what I wanted to do with our curriculum is make sure that we were including in our courses and our pathways an opportunity for students to understand how AI will impact the world of work that they're going into and having some really basic skills to navigate around it. And for me, the outcome of this is about giving you competitive advantage when you're interviewing for a job. So businesses value employees who can engage with AI. You know, even if you're not an expert, obviously Chris comes with a deep level rooted expertise, but for the rest of us, it's about having a baseline understanding. And we really believe that's going to set you apart. So as we go through the session today, Chris will talk about AI skills and why they're so important. And what we can do at the end, John will put some links in as we go through. And if you want to and you're interested, you can click on some of the certifications. So we've chosen both a Microsoft accreditation and also an AWS, Amazon Web Services accreditation as well. So I won't go into all those details because we can give you links to have a look at that. Today is all about why AI skills really matter and how you can use them as competitive advantage when you're being interviewed and help you stand out from the crowd. So hopefully, Jono, that explains a little bit about the why for me.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, it does indeed. Now, one of the things that I read about Chris, which I absolutely love, obviously very, very technical, and you wonder, how does somebody get into technology? Well, on Chris's 8th birthday, his parents bought him an Atari computer and he burst into tears because he wanted a bicycle. I love that story, Chris. Do you think it paid off?
It's still that Atari still lives in my parents' loft, Jono. So,
Does it?
and I still get the every time I go back to the UK and visit my parents, I still get the I told you so about, you could have come into software engineering and been brilliant at it from like age 10 because you had the right genes from us, and you had to wait until you were like 35 just to prove us wrong, didn't you? So, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, that might be true.
Do you know if the Atari still works?
I haven't. It's probably full of dust, or it's been eaten by mice.
It's yeah, maybe they were built like the Nokia 3210s that the battery's probably still going after all these years. But no, I
Could
love
be.
that story. So let's start off with the stats. We're also just for that we're going to be interactive. So Charlie is going to be posting some polls. So if you could answer these polls as we go throughout the sessions, and we'll read those poll results out as we go. Obviously, they're all going to be AI based. And that's one of the stats that we read today talking about AI. The World Economic Forum reported that AI and big data is now the most in-demand skill in the and has the highest expected growth globally up until 2030. So AI is something that everybody's talking about. It's a buzzword, but it is now slowly and surely taking over the world. And I think now is probably the best time ever to learn it, get certified in it, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So where should we start? We're going to talk about the impacts on non-technical employees, Chris. So first question that I have, many employers don't have a technical background. What are the biggest opportunities and risks AI creates for them in their day-to-day work?
So let's start by being optimistic. So let's start with the opportunities. So I think the single biggest opportunity that we see for AI for most jobs, and especially for knowledge workers, is it saves you time on repetitive tasks. So stuff that you do over and over again as part of your job, that's where it really has an opportunity to save you some time. Now, there's an interesting kind of other way of looking at it from the other end of the telescope, which is there's an American anthropologist whose writing I love, a guy called David Graeber, who coined the term BS jobs. So BS jobs are things which you kind of think nobody should really be doing them, and there's not a good reason for them to exist in modern workforces, but actually they're kind of common. The other way of looking at it is, well, actually, if it's really easy to automate something with generative AI, there's a good chance that it's actually kind of a BS job. And so, there is this possibility that we're going to start to see that people will be able to focus more on things where they can really make a difference, and they can offload all of the annoying cognitive tasks that don't really move the needle to generative AI. This is the dream of this future powered by AI solutions.
Can we break this down and talk about what is generative AI?
Yes, sure. Yes, of course. I should really start from the beginning. So, generative AI is one of the latest breeds of AI solutions. It generally means that you're trying to produce something which looks plausible from a bunch of data. Now, that data is usually scraped from the internet, And what you're trying to do is, in the case of typing something into ChatGPT, ChatGPT is trying to produce text which is believable that follows the prompt that you put in. So it's really as simple as playing a kind of word association game and trying to put in what is the most likely string of text to follow what you prompted with. And it's really surprising that it works as well as it does, but it's really just doing that thing of taking something like an internet average of the right follow-on text to what you produce. Now, there are all sorts of risks with that, and one of the big ones is, of course, that you're getting something which is plausible but not necessarily true. This is what we hear a lot with hallucinations and the risks of material which is not actually accurate. It's not the same as Google search because it's not designed to be truthful, it's designed to be plausible. So that's the big risk. Old AI is so more traditional, what
Sure.
most of us in the field would call machine learning, is really designed around the idea of just trying to spot patterns in data. So it's not really about generating new stuff, it's about labeling existing things. So the classic example is if you have photos on Tumblr, you might want to label whether or not they contain a cat or a dog. That's an old machine learning task which was being done so 2012, 2013 when the whole AI boom was just really starting to take off. But ChatGPT really flipped the script for everyone.
So, what was your earliest experience of AI, Chris?
That's a really good question. And actually, it's a really hard one to answer because I guess the first time I was really conscious of it, I would say, is probably Google route finding. So when you could pick up your smartphone, find the most effective way to somewhere, and you could see traffic jams along the way, and it would adaptively change as you were traveling. I think that was the first time I really came across something that I thought was genuinely AI. There's not really a good definition, so it's kind of a personal thing.
And then, as you spoke about their hallucinations, when
Mhm.
is that when AI tries to learn itself and it
It's where it tries to come up with something which is plausible, but it doesn't necessarily have the information. So you might ask it to tell you about a particular field of. I actually had this experience myself. So I played with one of the early large language models, which was supposed to be for physics research. And when I was still doing physics research, I published a lot of papers in a particular area, and I thought it'd be interesting to see what does it think my old professor published about. So I typed in a prompt for this thing, and it came up with a bunch of plausible things that Thomas had done. Some of them were true. And then at the end, there was a paper which he and I had apparently written together, and there was a nice citation to it. There was a link to where it was. We never wrote that paper. So this is an example of a hallucination. It's something which sounds believable and that the model thinks might follow on, but actually doesn't really exist.
really interesting? This was a professor, supposedly that you were a professor at Oxford University.
So this guy was in Luxembourg. So the two of us did work together when I was living in Luxembourg, and it had one of our real papers together, but it also made up this other one. So I wish I'd had this extra paper. It would have been great for my follow-on career, but unfortunately, we never wrote it. So
You
yeah.
shouldn't have told us. Great. I find this absolutely fascinating. Right. So, slight tangent there. So, next
Mm.
question: how can organizations ensure that AI adoption doesn't widen the gap between technical and non-technical staff?
So I think the real challenge here is technical people are always going to run ahead with these solutions. I've seen it in companies that I've worked in. Friends have told me about this. There's always the case that software engineers see a new tool like LLMs and they're going to run with it at 100 miles an hour. So really what you need to do is remove the technical barriers that exist so that people can use them more easily. I think actually what OpenAI did with ChatGPT did this really well because they made an interface that was super easy to use. So all of us could just go to a website, type in what we thought, and we would get a response out. So this was the first AI solution that really came with no technical baggage. So great job, OpenAI. You made this thing open. If you want to do it inside your business, you really need to make sure that all of the access is the same across teams. So normally what will happen is the IT departments will run ahead and they will sign up for licenses and they will tend to lead on generating policies. You actually need to free everyone else up to do the same thing. So allow your finance department, allow your HR department to start experimenting with these tools with appropriate guardrails, I should add, but allow them to really try them out and see how they work, and actually let them lead on implementation as well. So it shouldn't really be the case that it always falls to software engineering or IT. There are really good reasons to believe that subject matter expertise combined with large language models is incredibly powerful, and that's the direction that we should be trying to enable within companies. So get rid of technical barriers, make sure you have sensible policies, give them freely to everyone.
Well, no, just to come in there, actually, there was a question in the chat which Chris has just answered, which was around, can AI be used in HR? And that's what you're saying, isn't it? Actually, it's irrelevant of the function now, whether you're in product. I mean, I use it running a product team, I use it for my service team. It really doesn't matter what function. It's about what is it trying to achieve and how can AI be an enabler to do things quicker, safer, faster. So yeah, great question from one of our students there, but it's in all functions, yeah.
I actually think, Rachel, HR is possibly the place to lead from. So the HR function is one that's used to dealing with people. It's used to dealing with groups and teams who are very cross-functional and very multi-dimensional. I think it's a really great place to start, actually, with implementation for AI stuff.
I also like the comment in the chat from Graham who says, I love the fact that AI, like me, has knowledge gaps.
We all do, Graham.
Can I just ask about ChatGPT? Because that's obviously what, when
Mhm.
people talk about AI in particular, you hear ChatGPT coming up more so than ever. What other platforms are there like ChatGPT?
There are a bunch of other ones. So my personal favorite is actually there's another company apart from OpenAI who are valued in the hundreds of billions for reasons I'm not entirely sure of, if I'm honest, Jono, called Anthropic, and they have a solution called Claude. Claude is really good if you want to write code, but it's also very good for creative brainstorming. So I really like it for two completely non-intersecting things in my life. One is helping me to write code well, and the other is giving me ideas for writing articles. So I quite like to write things about technology and AI on Substack. Claude is really helpful in terms of brainstorming ideas for articles and how things might develop.
And is this come down from trialing different platforms that this is one of your the personal favorites in?
Exactly, yeah. So I also tried out Google, the Google Gemini family, and I also tried out the XAI Grok deployment. Grok, for reasons of Elon Musk, I'm tending to try and avoid because they're doing various things that I find a little bit distasteful with their AI on X these days. Google was pretty good, but not quite as I find Claude the best for creative stuff.
Okay. Um, and then kind of next question when we talk about learning AI, there's obviously you
Mhm.
can be really, really technical at a level that you are, Chris, or we can learn AI to improve processes in our workforce, which is what you're saying about HR and finance. And so you think that everybody, no matter what level, should have some level of AI training, yeah.
Definitely, yes, I completely agree. And actually, so probably, ironically, now is probably the worst time to go into actually developing the large language models. So you've seen these crazy offers from Meta of Mark Zuckerberg is trying to waive, I think it's $100 million a year packages in front of some researchers to come and work on large language models. The problem is that we're running out of headroom for growth there. So actually, ironically, if you're thinking of getting into AI to build large language models now, my advice is don't, it's too late. But for the rest of us, it's the perfect time to start learning. So for everyone else, these things are just starting to turn into real products that are useful. Now is the perfect time to get ahead and get a bit of competitive advantage.
So we've got the first poll back. So let's just have a look at this. So, what level would you consider your AI skill? How many have we got? We've got 32% complete novice and no experience, 66% of some experience, 2% lots of experience, and we haven't got any experts on the session yet. Um, yeah, so when we say some experience, so I would say I have some experience because I use ChatGPT or another platform, and I think that I can prompt AI to deliver information how I would want. Would we say that was some experience rather than not using anything whatsoever? How would you summarize that, Chris?
I think that sounds good to me. So I would say if you're answering this with lots of experience, I would expect that you have probably lots and lots of Word documents on your computer somewhere where you have your favorite prompt stored for building things. So some experience, I think if you've used this tool a little bit and tried to get good results out of it, that's, yeah, this is already a good head start on most of the population, I would say.
Great. So next question. Please keep them coming in. We've got it's great. There's loads. If you can shout out, Rachel, if you see any questions as we go. So Chris.
Yeah, sure. There are lots of great questions actually. I think we'll at the end, Johnny, when we've got our question time, I'll flip back. Some of the people have asked some really great questions, but they're definitely good things for Chris. So yeah, come back to me at the end, and I'll try and apologies we won't get to everybody, but I'm doing my best typing in the background. So if I look a bit vacant on the camera, that's why.
Great. So Chris, next question. What changes in roles or workflows are you seeing as AI takes on more routine or repetitive tasks?
So honestly, I would say we're a bit early. So I'm not seeing too much in the way of people's jobs actually changing and the way in which people's roles are changing. It's not, we're not there yet. And actually the main reason I think is because there's been a big push in 2025. Sam Altman said that 2025 was going to be the year of agents. And there's this idea of using agents to do complete end-to-end tasks. So the idea would be rather than having a human being involved, you would just write into a prompt, please build me an Instagram clone. The thing would go away and write all the code and then deploy it for you, and you'd have your Instagram clone. These things honestly just aren't there yet. So and there are reasons to believe that agents that are capable of doing real composable tasks like that are not really ever going to be to the point where they're good enough to replace human beings. So my suspicion would be that we're going to see a slow change towards people using AI more in their day-to-day roles, but the glue work is going to be done by human beings. So the actual ability to stick together and compose tasks is still very much a human level intelligence problem. So it's more the way that the dynamic is probably going to evolve is human beings are going to be less the orchestra members and more the composers. And that means that they're going to be farming out parts of their work, and particularly repeatable parts of their work, to large language models to do the grunt bit. But the actual composing it all together still needs to be done by a human being, really, to be good enough quality.
And
There
do
was
you think,
actually sorry, John, go for it.
no, so do you think that there will be a time frame when this changes, or is you thinking maybe over the next 5 or 10 years?
So my suspicion would be that actually I think work is sufficiently variable that it's going to be really hard for these machines to take over completely. So my expectation is that the tools will get better and that the ability to do small tasks within a job will start to become more self-contained and um, more the sort of thing that you can give to a Gen AI solution. But still, the real difficulty is composing those different things. So human beings are really good at dealing with situations we haven't seen before. Large language models, by contrast, really have to have seen something before, and preferably multiple times. Otherwise, they tend to hallucinate. So we're we're different sorts of intelligence, essentially. So large language models very good at doing repeatable stuff. Don't get tired, don't take sick days, don't sleep. Human beings, we're more emotional beings, but at the same time, we're also much more capable of composing things that we're not familiar with. So we're really good at doing tasks that we're seeing for the first time.
So I was literally thinking on my run at lunchtime about this subject, and we're talking about hallucinations. But do you think we will ever get to a point where it is Terminator and AI is thinking for itself, and they will outrun the humans? Is this way down
This
the line that we might not ever experience, but next generations?
So this is a super interesting question, and it's something that if you want to cause basically a fight at any party with AI researchers, just throw this grenade in and just walk out. This would be my recommendation. So basically, everyone disagrees. Personally, my point of view is the way in which we're doing this now, we'll never get to anything that even vaguely resembles human intelligence. And the reason is that essentially what we're doing is we're asking these things to learn from all of the information that we've written about the world. The problem is that human beings don't write everything about how we interact with the world. So when you learn to catch a ball, you don't write down the equations of motion and solve them. You just, you intuitively do it. You learn by doing. And so our way of learning is by taking actions in the physical world and then getting feedback. That's not how large language models learn. They learn from seeing what we write about things and then trying to reproduce it. And there have been studies which show that they actually don't have world models. They don't really understand physics. There are all of these things that are missing in the large language model interpretation that we carry around in our heads unconsciously. So we're doing something wrong if we want to get to an agent that can really take action.
I'm glad I threw the grenade into the ring just to get that answer. I'm sure there were a few people who wanted to hear that as well. It's super interesting, Chris. Let's move on to talking about AI in business. Okay. So from your perspective, what are the most common and effective ways companies are already using AI outside of the tech sector?
So this is also a really interesting question. There are lots of different ways that you can answer this, and it comes back to that thing we were discussing before of AI is not a very well defined thing. So I would say if you make the divide between generative AI and everything else, then everything else has been being used really since, I mean, the first AI algorithm is kind of Alan Turing's chess playing algorithm that he wrote down on pencil and paper in 1937. But there was no computing hardware to run it on, so the only way you could play against his engine was he would sit there and do the calculations and work out what moves it should make. So that kind of, in some ways, is the first AI. But so the traditional AI has very long roots. It's used kind of everywhere, and it just fades into the background of the way in which things function for us. So we have Siri on our phones. Siri is all powered by neural networks. We have Google route planning, like we discussed. This is all running on algorithms which are working probabilistically to work out what the best route is for us. All of these things have been around for a long time. I would say the best AI kind of hides in plain sight. It's the stuff that we rely on, like weather forecasting. We check the weather before we go to work in the morning to see if we need to take an umbrella. It's already out there and working really well in the world. Just the new pretender on the block is generative AI. It's very powerful, but we're still looking for the use cases that are as effective as things like route planning or predicting the weather.
That's absolutely fascinating. Things like that. You just go about your daily life and you forget what goes into forecasting the weather, and you just look at your phone. It's on an app, and there you go. It tells you it's raining. The
It's
majority.
amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
It is amazing. So I'm throwing you on the spot here. So let's say somebody wanted to tell us the weather forecast and get into
Mhm.
AI. What kind of thing would you need to learn in AI to be able to do that?
So this is a whole other bit of AI, which is actually kind of my favorite bit. So apologies if I start gushing and getting too excited about this.
Go
But
for it.
so there's a whole probabilistic area of AI. So large language models will tell you definitively this is the right text to follow after what you wrote, and they will tell you this is best. But they don't really define best. They just say like this is the right outcome. You might notice if you type the same prompt into ChatGPT multiple times, you get different answers. This has been a weird problem that has existed for large language models for a long time, which was recently solved. It turns out the problem is that they're just batching all of the queries together. Because the batches are different, then you get a different answer. Weird thing. But in general, you should always get the same answer if you have your settings right for your large language model. When you do probabilistic stuff, what you're saying is, well, my outcome will be there's a 20% chance of rain. So in the long run, if I have a lot of days where there's a 20% chance of rain, 1 in 5 of them it will actually rain. But you don't know on a given day. So what you're trying to do is predict a good representation, a good probability of what's going to happen, but you don't actually know what the outcome is definitively going to be. This stuff is totally separate from generative AI and large language models, but it's fascinating and it could be really useful for all sorts of things like logistics, like planning for any sorts of solar storms that we get from the sun. All of these things rely on probabilities rather than certainties.
Do you need a lot of technical expertise to be able to get into something like that? Because obviously we'll have people on this session now thinking, right, I want to get into AI. I need to start as a beginner, move on, machine learning, etc. What would
Yes.
you need to do?
So my advice is always find a puzzle that you have in your day-to-day life where you can collect some data and then start from there. So if you want to get into this stuff, learning to code in Python is always a good idea because Python is basically the language that everyone uses for machine learning these days. Trying to learn a little bit of maths and statistics, but you don't need too much, honestly. And then looking for good problems. So looking for places where you can collect data. So, I mean, the classic example would be build your own spam filter. So we all have these things built into our Google Mail now that filters out spam. You can look in your spam folder and look at what's in there, and you can start to build from that, just ways of filtering out your own spam emails. It's something that's a solved problem for Google already, but it's kind of a fun thing to do just for yourself. Solving little problems like that is really, it can be really fun. I mean, similarly, my pet project at the moment is just behind me, but you can't quite see it. There's a model rocket on the shelf just here.
I really want
So
to see it.
my super nerdy hobby, let me tilt my camera so you can see.
Oh,
It's a
cool.
Saturn 1B model. But so my super nerdy hobby is building model rockets. I'm building a little reinforcement learning agent at the moment to steer my model rockets. I'm totally convinced that no one will ever let me fly these things, but I think it would still be a fun project to work on. So yeah,
Well, if ever you do get the green light to fly them, I'll come over and help you if I can.
deal.
Right, next question. How should businesses balance efficiency gains from AI with the need to maintain trust, transparency, but also human judgment as well?
This is honestly, I think this is the real crux of everything. So there are a bunch of reasons why this has become really important, and I pushed for this a lot, obviously in the education sector working in AI. You need to be really careful to make sure that people understand what it is they're interacting with. Now the EU and the ISO standards are all catching up to this, and they're really keen on the idea of having standards for responsible AI. It's really, it's crucial. I think the biggest problem that actually I see out there is there are lots of people building bots on top of ChatGPT where they don't upfront explain that it's a bot that you're interacting with. And I worked a long time ago in a startup which was working in customer contact stuff back in the pre-ChatGPT days. We had a little bot that we would put on people's websites. It would tell you answers to your questions, and we had a really amusing problem with it. So people would assume that this was a customer contact point where they were talking to a human being. So we got a lot of traffic from people who would do things like there was one guy would type in his 16-digit credit card number every time he contacted our customer service bot because that was how he was used to telling a real human being to find his account. And of course, you can't have people doing that. So we realized early on, it's really important that people understand that this thing's a bot. Let's give it a little icon with a robot so that then people realize they're not talking to a human. Taking that forward, it's super important that nobody feels that they're talking to a human being and they're being tricked by some ChatGPT wrapper. I think also we need to be careful about when we're deploying these new services, you still need escalation routes to human beings. So we talked about hallucinations before. OpenAI very transparently published a paper last week where they said hallucinations are not going away. They're a mathematical certainty. They're always going to be there. So there's always going to be this problem that these things will have a certain failure rate. And then you need to have a way of having a human able to step in to correct it. So whether it's writing code or writing policy statements or interacting with customers on a website, there always needs to be a human in the loop somewhere that can just oversee and check that the work is good. I think that's not going anywhere.
That's really encouraging, actually, Chris, because in some of the questions people have been saying, oh, is it sort of taking over my role, or will it be able to do the whole task? And I think you summarised that really nicely, actually. As one, let's be really clear that we are interacting with some technology, but very few organisations will just rely on that as the final say. And there's been lots of incidents in industry over the last couple of years where something's gone wrong because a set of code was produced, it wasn't checked, and then it caused a problem. So
Right.
that's really, a lot of people are asking that question in the chat, so that's really encouraging to see. Just to pick up on what you said, because it might be quite interesting to our students. How would you describe, or how could you summarize what you think employers are going to want all employees to think about in terms of the ethics of using AI. Because, linking there about legislation and governance and stuff, but ethically, where are organizations going to sit about saying, no, we don't use it for this, it's not appropriate? Have you got anything you can share?
So there are some very good guidelines in the EU AI Act. So the EU AI Act was widely expected to not come in until next year. It actually came in August of this year, I think. And it gives very strong guidelines about places where you just shouldn't use AI. So they define high risk categories. If you're high risk, you come in for very significant scrutiny, like very serious investigation of what you're doing. And they're things like anything where people's life outcomes might be impacted. So the classic one is
Yeah,
recruitment. So if you're
yeah,
using purely an AI system to make decisions about who should be hired, who should be fired, who should be promoted, then you're immediately high risk under the EU AI Act. So actually,
interesting.
the EU's done a really nice job of defining what these things are. The difficulty is going to be the same as GDPR, which is it's all going to be defined by test cases. So it's likely to be one of those things where there are, right now, I'm sure, a bunch of companies out there who are doing things which are high risk and unethical under the EU AI Act, but we'll have to see what happens. The fines are very severe, so it's a really, they gave the jurisdiction teeth for this one. So it's something like 7% of global revenue or a maximum fine of $30 million. So
Wow.
it's
Okay,
they're taking it fairly seriously, but we'll have to
good.
see
That's good
what
to
really
know.
happens.
Yeah. And we see with a lot of our students that are particularly going into, sort of high risk sectors or things like the NHS or professional services, that organizations now have their own version of ChatGPT, because what they
Yes.
don't want is lots of company information just being put into open source. So actually
Yes.
saying, this is the route, this is how we use it. So that's really encouraging. And a lot of our students are saying, so how do I get qualified and stuff? It's really about having an awareness of how it can work, because whoever you go and work for, they could have their own approach to using generative
Absolutely.
AI, and they'll train you on that. But isn't it great to be able to talk about that at interview, that I understand how it can impact how I work, particularly in project management, whether it's the impact of using AI to look at some basic risks. So think about your risk register in a project.
Yes.
Getting AI to start that process for you could be quite useful, but the
Right.
human would be. I think there's one thing I've always learned from you is that you talk about the human and the AI, and the AI is the co-pilot,
Hmm. Absolutely.
which I
Yeah. And
think is a really nice.
and it's a really important paradigm to hang on to as well. So the other risk really that we can talk about with this stuff is human beings ultimately need to exercise our brains. The brain is a muscle.
Yeah.
And so if you start outsourcing and offloading too many cognitive tasks to ChatGPT, you will find that your brain atrophies quite quickly. I have to admit to having been guilty of this. I definitely got Claude to write me too much code at a period earlier in the year, and then I came back to thinking about it myself. Like, what on earth am I doing here? This is really dumb. Why did I try and do it this way? So it's also really important to realize that we're being the composer, you still you have to check every note. So if you're the conductor at the front of the audience and you have your army of GPTs doing stuff for you, ultimately, when you're conducting the orchestra, you still have to listen to every note that every person plays. And if there are bum notes in there, you need to catch them and root them out. So it it takes some cognitive load off us, but actually, really, ChatGPT is taking the easy stuff and leaving us with the hard stuff.
Lovely. Thank you. Sorry, Johnny.
Not at all. Fascinating. We're going to move on slightly to it's probably my favorite topic, talking about kind of the skills within AI, the skills for AI fluency, if that's all right. Keep your questions coming in. So, first question around this, Chris, is if you could name three core skills that every employee, not just a technologist, should develop to be AI fluent, what would they be?
So it probably doesn't surprise you to hear, given that I'm very much about the human-centric view of AI. Actually, my three skills for AI fluency are surprisingly human-centric. So there are three things that I tend to try and encourage my team members to have as well. So being able to ask good questions and set good context. So this is really important in prompting. You, if you want to get the best out of these tools, you really need to be able to give them good context to work with, but also be able to ask good, unambiguous questions and be clear in the way in which you ask. The second one is critical thinking, so the ability to question the answers that you get from people, and also there's an element of psychological safety which is really important here. So being prepared to question what comes out of the machine, and also being confident enough to do that. So don't blindly believe that what ChatGPT tells you is true. Go and check your sources, challenge and ask deeper questions. It's got better at saying I don't know, so use the fact that it's got better at saying I don't know to push for deeper understanding. And then the last one is really very important across everything, and is the modern embodiment of a very old thing known as the Toyota production system, which is systems thinking. So that's really looking at the whole thing that you're doing end to end rather than just the little task that you're focused on right now, and being able to see the friction points, see the problems that come up from that, and be able to go and then fix them. So as you start to lose, I mean, this is lose in a good way,
Yeah.
lose the annoying bitty tasks that take a lot of our cognitive effort day to day, you're going to free up employees' time, and that time can then be redirected to actually trying to improve the whole system. So there's a kind of knowledge work equivalent of the Toyota production system today, which is empowering your employees to actually go and ask questions of how you do things and to refine your processes.
Can you think of any ways that you speed up process in your work by getting your team to use AI? What kind of tasks are they?
There are all sorts. So the ones that immediately leap to mind are it's really quite useful. So it's uniquely useful for writing code. And the reason is really simple. So if you write a piece of code, at the end of the day, you can compile it and see if it runs. If it runs, then you can see how long it runs for. You have a real empirical measure of whether or not it's good. It's a bit more difficult when you get AI to write prose and text for you, because there's no equivalent of compiling text and seeing if it runs. You really have to read it line by line and see if it flows and makes sense. So it's a little bit more challenging outside of the coding world, but in the coding world, it's been brilliant for helping us to make sure that we have good testing for code, helping to write documentation so that new developers can easily understand what we're doing, writing glue processes, so writing stuff, particularly things that you need to do once and then throw away, that would take you a long time and a lot of effort to do on your own. Fantastic for just writing stuff that you don't need to maintain once and then throwing it away. Um, what else? All sorts of, like, honestly summarizing meeting minutes and that kind of thing too.
So you don't think there's any stigma? There might be in some companies, depending on how forward thinking they are. But if it's quite obvious to see if someone comes to you who's interviewing and you can see the whole presentation has just been done from AI, and you can still see the hyphens, haven't even deleted those. That feels that it's wrong. What's your thoughts on that? Is there a wrong amount of AI that you can be using?
Think it depends. So yeah, dreaded M dashes. Honestly, they're the bane of everyone's life now. Going through and deleting M dashes, there should definitely be a plugin for that. Um, yeah, I think for some things AI is fine, and especially for like we were saying, so the sort of the low level tasks that need to be repeated and done a lot. So things like summarizing meeting minutes, or writing end of week reports from a bunch of stuff that you did, that is kind of low-hanging fruit for AI. But when it comes to things about you as an individual, it's really important to put yourself back into the equation. So if you're writing a resume with AI, for example, you really need to go back and make sure that it's your voice that you're writing in. Otherwise, we all have this ability to tune in and realize that something's been written by large language models rather than human beings. Nobody can quite define what it is, but we all somehow know when something's machine written. If you're doing any sort of important thinking work, don't use a large language model for it. If you really have to think deeply about it, it should be you.
Again, it's absolutely fascinating. Just this is something that you've touched on already. In terms of employees, how can employees learn to critically assess AI outputs rather than simply trusting them. And again, this is part of the stigma around AI, where
Yeah.
what they're using. How can we find that out?
Actually, so to the stigma of AI point, there's a study released by Harvard Business Review back in August where they said that one of the reasons why fewer people are using AI in enterprise than they thought was because they view that there's a stigma around it. So particularly software developers feel a little bit like they're giving up on their craft by using large language models to write code. To be honest, I don't really agree with this. I think it's just the detail of how you do it. So you can still be a very good orchestrator and without being deeply into the details of how you write a particular routine. For critically assessing outputs, it's challenging. So I think it's really going to require us to think differently about how we build user interfaces for these machines. So the usual paradigm for product development for the last 25 years has really been don't make me think. So have a happy path, which is really easy. Make sure that it's very clear the flow for users to go through. If you want people to think about stuff, you need to force them to think. So we're going to have to rethink our product development mentality a little bit and actually possibly deliberately inject a bit of friction into how these tools are built so that people really do critically assess. It's really hard to spot sometimes when these things hallucinate. So I was lucky enough to get early access to GPT-2 when you had to sign up on the OpenAI website. And I remember trying it out early in 2022. I got it to write a bunch of stories, as I think everyone did. And I copied a prompt that someone else had written, which was to write a story about a magical unicorn. And this thing wrote like 3 beautiful paragraphs, and I thought, oh, this is really great. And then in the third paragraph, I noticed it said, the unicorn shook its head and its 4 magnificent horns glinted in the sun. It's like, wait a second, that's not a unicorn. And so, but it was really subtle. So, and because it wrote really beautifully, I didn't notice it right away. So it took me a few passes to realize, okay. So you really need to build in um, some enthusiasm for people to think carefully about what they're reading. These things, because they're designed to be very fluent and very plausible, they hide their little mistakes in a very nefarious way. So you really need to challenge people to think carefully. So I mean things like don't give them a way of accepting all changes from large language models. That's a really bad idea. So yeah.
Yeah, Johnny, just building on that, one of the things in the certification programs that we run, and Chris, it would be good to get your view on this. One of the skills that comes out in the program is for the level of training we're doing on the use of AI in industry is the ability to write a great prompt. So it's a little bit about what you're saying there. So write me a story about a unicorn with one horn type thing. Would it have
Exactly.
solved the problem of the
Exactly.
unicorn having 4 horns or something? So I just wonder for our audience if it's okay, just to, for those of you that you may all be really comfortable with what a prompt is, and I know sometimes we describe it as prompt engineering, which all sounds very fancy, but what about prompts? Why are they so key?
It's really so it's the same thing that we were talking about before. So it's looking for plausible text that follows. So really what you're doing when you're prompt engineering, you're trying to find the right bit of the data that's been scraped from the internet to build these things that will do a good job. So to give you a nice example from working at Obrizum, one of the challenges that we had was grading free-form essays. So getting something like Claude to grade an answer to a question against a rubric. And it turned out that just giving a model answer and asking the thing to grade it, it would be really over the top nice. So you could write something which was not that great as an answer to a question. And I think we were using ChatGPT at the time. ChatGPT would say, great job. Like this is an 80 out of 100 essay. It's like, this is terrible. I would give this like 10 out of 100. So we had to think hard about how to make this thing mark more harshly. It turned out that a really great way was injecting into the prompt, you are a high school teacher, build me a rubric for marking an essay against this thing, and then mark the essay against the rubric. And as soon as you narrowed it down to the bit of the internet where educators write stuff, suddenly it got much harsher. It's like that now you have the real high school teachers marking the essays rather than the nice people who just want to support their friends and say, yeah, you did a great job. And so
Interesting.
it's kind of the same with all prompt engineering. You're trying to find that bit of the data that's in there where this task is already well done. So try and think about places where, when you're prompting for a particular thing, try and think about places on the internet where you think people would do a good job of this, and then
Mhm.
target your prompts towards that.
Got it. Lovely. Thank you.
I'm sure I saw that four-horned unicorn in Philosopher's Stone. Someone J.K. Rowling was
Ah, could
inspired by
be.
something. It might have been you.
Yeah, could be. Hmm.
Right, that was a great question, Rachel. Next one from me.
Mm.
Touch on soft skills now, which gets discussed a lot.
Mm.
What role do soft skills like communication, adaptability, critical thinking, things like that, play in an AI embedded workplace?
So I think that you can probably guess the answer to my answer to this question from what I've said previously. I think these things are going to become more important, not less. So as we stop being the players in the orchestra and we start composing, the main body of what we do as people in the knowledge economy is going to be actually interacting with other human beings. So we're going to be able to get through the technical components of our work a bit faster and with a bit less mental load thanks to using generative AI. So then the rest of our time is going to be making sure that the people around us understand what we're doing and understand how they can support us and how we can support them. So I would say communication is going to be very important. Adaptability is vital because we can see already that the pace of change is just going up year after year. So I always joke, my dad had the same job for 38 years. I think the longest time I've held a job in my adult life is 4 years. And I imagine that, my friends' kids are probably going to have careers that last 3 years before they move on to being something completely different. So being adaptable is going to be really important, whether or not AI takes over. So actually, even if generative AI doesn't become embedded everywhere, technology is just advancing the pace at which everything changes so much that we're going to have to be adaptable no matter what. And then critical thinking is very important, but everyone only has so much energy for it. So it's really a case of making sure that you save up your mental juices for the really hard critical thinking struggles that you're going to have. So particularly when you're prompting an AI about something you're less familiar with or less capable with, that's going to be a place where you have to be really skeptical and really check your sources.
Great, thanks, Chris. Another question on this, and then we can go through
Mm.
some of the questions. We've got loads of questions coming in, and then I've got some more kind of rounded AI questions for you as well. So, if we look ahead, what advice would you give employees who want to future-proof their careers as AI does continue to evolve?
So my suggestion, my approach would be kind of a barbell strategy. So on one end of the barbell, make sure that you develop deep expertise in something. So the real combination, the killer combination with AI is going to be deep subject matter expertise and capability to use generative AI to speed you up. So it's really important that you develop those deep skills now more than ever, because they will stand the test of time and also set you up in a good place to move forward in your career. But at the same time, do use generative AI, do try and lift a weight off your own shoulders by trying to automate simple tasks that you do regularly. Just don't rely on it too much. So the risk is always that brain atrophy, brain rot issue that we talked about before, which is you start relying on it for everything. I have been guilty of this. I do not advise other people do it.
Learn from Chris's mistakes is what we're learning here.
Yeah, definitely.
Love it. Cool. I'm just going to ask you a kind of more rounded AI question in
Mhm.
terms of the kind of the future of AI, and you might know more than us. What do you think are the most, well, you'll definitely know more than me. What are the most exciting developments within AI right now, which could shape the future more than we can even contemplate?
So I'm going to say something quite controversial here. I don't think it's large language models, and I don't think it's generative AI. So actually, the place where you see people playing that really makes me excited, and bear in mind, I'm very biased on this because I'm a former physicist, so my whole background is in physics. people are doing a lot of really interesting stuff with robotics. And what they're doing with robotics is embedding AI agents into robotic environments and allowing these things to go out and explore the world and really discover things about their physical surroundings. I think this is really, really interesting because you start to see these things being able to solve problems in a different way. So there's a long time ago, the DeepMind team, when they were still DeepMind outside of Google, worked on reinforcement learning for Atari games. And they discovered all of these cool and fascinating things about old Atari games that were really unknown to human players. So there were different ways of playing racing games that no human being had ever discovered that actually the reinforcement learning agents could find. If you combine that with the physical world, there's a real possibility that we might actually discover new ways of engineering solutions, new ways of building production lines, new ways of generating power, exciting things that we don't yet see and we haven't stumbled across ourselves. I think that's really exciting to me.
And I knew you'd have a fantastic answer for that as well. Next one then. This might be something that you've been meaning to get off your chest for ages. What one
Mm.
misconception around AI would you love to disappear?
That artificial general intelligence is coming. So
Artificial.
my so there's this idea of so AGI for those of you on the call who haven't heard this term before is the idea of an artificial intelligence which can do, I think OpenAI define it as any economically viable task that a human being could do at least as well as a human being. There's also the next step beyond that, which is artificial superintelligence, which is something which is able to improve itself. So rather than just being an intelligence which is static, it would actually be able to iteratively improve itself. So it would just have this runaway intelligence that we don't understand anymore. The thing that I think a lot of techno utopianists miss when they talk about these things is there are millions of years of evolution that go into the way in which we experience the world. So there's an awful lot of time that other species and our own species have put into developing to where we are today that we don't really count. So actually, there's a lot more that goes into carbon-based intelligence than meets the eye. It's not just that we're born and we acquire information. There's also a lot of architecting that went on before that.
Can I squeeze in one last one, Johnny? Because we've got lots of students on the phone that are obviously, at stages where they've done their certifications, whether they're in project management, IT, data, code, and they're going for interviews. And you're a hiring manager, Chris. You've built teams over the year in different businesses. What would you look for as a hiring manager as the minimum level? So not for one of your real tech roles, but for somebody joining your team, what would you look for? I mean, what would you be asking them in interview that just gives you that, yeah, this person understands the impact of AI? Probably to put you on the spot on that question. So
No, that's a
second to
really good
think.
question. So I think it's the way that I look for this more generally is just to look for people's curiosity. So actually, the really important thing more than anything else in using AI well is being curious. So and not taking the first answer as being correct. That's a personality trait, but it's also something that's teachable. So looking for people's drive to discover new things, that's a really good proxy for seeing if they're going to be good with generative AI solutions. More generally, I think I would also like to just ask them, questions around how have you used it? And even if the answer is just, well, I use it to write emails to my nan so I don't have to write them myself, then that's a good answer. Some awareness of the fact that the technology exists and that it's useful for some things in daily life is enough.
Yeah, that's great. Hopefully that's good advice for our students. Thank you. Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. And then we are annoyingly running out of time, Chris. So obviously we've got a mix of people on this session. We've obviously got students with us, people who are just researching what to do next. Just as a
Mhm.
more general question, if someone is looking at getting into obviously AI, but tech in general, what
Yes.
advice would you give to those people?
Um, Start small. So I have to admit, I mean, my path into tech was not illustrious. So I left physics at age 35. I landed in Switzerland, which is not the easiest place in the world to find jobs. And I traipsed around teaching myself to code, and I'm the worst kind of self-taught coder, so I had to then learn how to do it right, having learned how to do it. And then I traipsed around job fairs and I went and talked to people. It's really important to go and find someone who will take a chance on you, especially in the current job market, because it's not easy out there. Make sure that you have interesting things to talk about and show that curiosity that we were just talking about. So rather than just relying on your certifications, which obviously will help you a lot and move you forward in your career in general, make sure that you have a little project that you can talk about where you used what you learned in your certifications for something in your day-to-day life. That's really appealing to people on my side of the hiring desk, just because we really want to see that you're curious enough to actually do this sort of thing in your own time as well.
Can I ask as well, just
Mhm.
finally, we talk about where do we see AI in 10 years? And you mentioned that you're the longest time you've been in a job is say 4 years. Where do you see yourself in the next 10 to 20 years?
Oh, goodness me. In 20 years, hopefully retired.
Great answer.
No, I think I'll probably be on to career five by then. So, yeah, I really don't know. I think the lesson of 2025 for me has been that my crystal ball is broken. I really I can't imagine even what's coming this time next year at this point in time. So there could be amazing technological developments that we really haven't dreamed of that come down the pipe in the next 6 to 12 months. So I think it comes back to that point about adaptability before. It's really important to be adaptable because you think you know what's going to happen, but everything can change in 6 months.
Does that mean there's an element of fear with you as well that we don't know what's going to happen?
I think I'm possibly over optimistic. I find that more exciting. So I like the idea of a world that's not entirely predictable. Obviously, there are downsides to it as well. So there are definitely aspects of. I grew up in the 80s. We were told that we'd passed the end of history when I was a kid. So the fact that suddenly everything seems to be up for grabs and everything's changing is a little bit scary. But from a technological point of view, it feels like things definitely have potential to improve a lot from where we're at.
Yeah, fascinating. Chris, we are running out of time. One of my favorite sentences, I think Rachel said then, human is the AI and the AI is the co-pilot.
Mhm.
I love that. Thanks for everyone who answered in the this poll. So would you benefit from an AI certification? So 86% of you say they would, which is probably the right time. So Rachel, do you want to just get a snapshot overview of the new AI courses that we have again that you touched on at the start?
Yes, of course I can. So for those that are studying more in the tech world, the two certifications that we've chosen are the AWS AI Practitioner and the Microsoft Azure AI Fundamentals. So they're somewhere between 20 and 10 hours of learning, and you'll get full certification from those awarding bodies. And they do everything, all the basics that Chris has spoken about, understanding the ethics, prompt engineering, basic MML. So really good for those tech audiences. And then in our project management students, we've created um, uh, three different pieces of content that focus on AI in project management overall, AI in risk management, and the ethics of AI in project management. And they are programs of not formal certification, but certification by learning people from a quality point of view. And anybody that enrolled after the 1st of September, both of those things get embedded in our pathways as standard. But I think we're going to drop some things in the chat, aren't we? And people can email in to enroll at Learning People and we can give you way more information. Or if you're already a student, give Student Care a call, speak to your career consultant, and they'll guide you to the right place.
Perfect. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, it's specifically for students. If you are a current student with us, we can do an exclusive offer of 30% off the AI training. So you just need to email us at enroll@learningpeople.com, and we can send over that information for you if you are a student. If you're not a student with us already, we have other offers for you as well. Please speak to the career consultant that you have been speaking to, and they can discuss that in more details too. I think that's got to be it because we're over on time. But I have thoroughly enjoyed today, Chris. Thank you so much for your time. So insightful.
Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely my pleasure. Anytime.
I really hope you can get out on the mountain bike this weekend as well, and the weather stays good for you.
Take
Cool.
care.
Joining everyone, and we'll send a recording of this session out for you, to you tomorrow. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Johnny. Thank you. Bye bye.